All right, good evening, everybody. This is an event that I look forward to every year, although this year it just doesn't feel like tree lighting weather. It's about 80 degrees today or so. In any case, welcome again. This is an important event, and frankly, an event that we wish we didn't have to have. We are here tonight to remember those who have been victims of domestic violence here in New Bedford and beyond, and to stand here and resolve to do all that we can to prevent further victims. We all know somebody, including people close to us, who've been victims of domestic violence, and it's remarkable in this day and age that we still have to have these kinds of conversations. For most of us, for the vast majority of us, the days are long past when in polite circles it was somehow acceptable to lay a hand on a spouse or a girlfriend or a partner. But unfortunately, there remain out there folks who don't see it quite that way. So tonight, what we do is stand shoulder to shoulder with the victims of domestic abuse. We stand shoulder to shoulder with our friends at the Women's Center on County Street and its leader, Pam McLeod, who is back from her medical leave today, day one, and we're happy to see Pam back in action today, especially on this day that we commemorate victims of domestic abuse. I just want to say tonight, thank you for coming out and being supportive. And thank you, Pam, for your leadership and all that you do at the Women's Center in providing not just shelter, but also support that for women and for men when all other options have been exhausted. And so we continue today to resolve that we will fight for the cause that you spend your days upholding until we reach the day when we can say that no one is a victim of domestic violence anymore. There are a handful of speakers that I'd like to call up. I would first of all like to acknowledge the public officials in attendance. We have our police chief, Dave Provencher's here, who will say a few words. Members of the City Council are here. City Council President Bruce Stewart, whom I'll ask to call up, as well as Ward 3 City Councilor Henry Bousquet, Ward 6 Councilor Joe Lopes, and Councilor at Large Brian Gomes, all who've been here to this ceremony in the past and have been big supporters of the Women's Center. And of course, you'll hear from Pam at the end of the ceremony. So let me first call up our police chief, Dave Provencher, for a few words. Dave?
Thank you, Mayor. I can't think of a more important reason for us to come out and stand together on a nice early October night than to recognize and pay attention to what I consider to be the single most important violence problem in this community, and that's domestic violence. No one works harder, more tirelessly, or more effectively than the staff at the Women's Center, and I think Pam and her staff there have provided us an amazing example over the years of how to keep an issue out in front of the community and keep our focus and attention on. And I think that's the message we ought to all walk away from tonight with, is that this issue has to stay in the forefront of our minds and keep our attention on making women, families, and children safer. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I would also like to recognize City Councilor Jane Gonzalez, who in her career on the City Council has been a champion of women's issues and has been a champion and a supporter and a next-door neighbor of the Women's Center, and we're pleased to see Jane here tonight. With that, let me call up my friend and colleague, Bruce Duarte, the President of the City Council. Bruce.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to everyone who's come out tonight. I have some remarks, and hopefully I can see it because it is kind of dark up here. Domestic violence touches the lives of Americans of all ages, leaving a devastating impact on women, men, and children of every background and circumstance. A family home becomes a place of fear, hopelessness, and desperation when a woman is battered by her partner, a child witnesses the abuse of her loved one, or a senior is victimized by family members. As you know, domestic violence was for too long seen as a lesser offense. It was frequently treated like a private matter. Victims were often just sent home from the hospital without intervention. Children were left to suffer in silence. Abuse could go on for years, and in some cases, this violence would only end with the death of a woman or child. Today, we have made progress in changing the way people think about domestic violence. This has been done in no small part because of the advocacy of your organization and the willingness of victims to tell their stories. During this month, we must rededicate ourselves to breaking the cycle of violence. By changing attitudes that support violence, we recognize that domestic violence can be prevented. May God give you the wisdom and direction as you assist the victims of violence, and may God bless the victims of domestic violence. Thank you.
With that, let me call up my friend Pam McLeod, who's under whose able leadership the Women's Center has been able to get women back on track, to help them reconstruct their lives after experiences that none of us would want to see forced upon our mothers, our sisters, our daughters. Pam, it's great to see you back in the saddle. I have a city proclamation for you to mark the occasion, and I just want to say thanks for all you do.
Thank you. Now I have to move the microphone. Even more. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I had a few words written down so I would make sure that to mention all of our events and so forth, but as other people have acknowledged, it's quite dark. So I'm going to do what I often do and just speak off the cuff and from my heart. And mostly my heart is telling me to thank all of you who are here for coming out. We are a small group, but we are mighty. And if we start by being the victims' voices, then we can spread that word. It would be very hard this year to not recognize that domestic violence is present, it's here, and it affects all of us. We have had international news, national news, and local news in Massachusetts that shows that this can affect anyone at any time. And of course, it sometimes takes celebrity happenings to get the attention of the media. And in the case this year, there were several famous people who were either perpetrators or connected to perpetrators. Chief Prevention, some of your able staff is going by, so I'll take a moment. So because of that, the media turned their attention to domestic violence in a way that they have not in years. It would be hard, unless you were living under a rock, to have not come into connection with one of those stories that have been in the media, particularly with the murders of young women. And that's really, in the end, what we are seeking to prevent. We want to prevent the 26 to 38 homicides that happen in Massachusetts every year because of domestic violence. This is a preventable form of death. It is the most preventable form of death recognized by the World Health Organization because we know what to do to prevent it. And how we prevent death by this kind of violence is that we have to be the voice of the victims. They cannot speak out. They are living in fear, and then some of them are silenced forever. So let's be the voices for the ones who've been silenced. Let's be the voices for the ones who live in silence every day and live in fear in their own homes, live in fear of a person who is supposed to love them and care for them. It is a betrayal of the most intimate kind. In fact, it's called intimate partner violence, because it is someone that you know and care about that is perpetrating this violence. And it's hard for victims to acknowledge that someone that they love could harm them so gravely, might even murder them. So we have to be the ones that acknowledge that this can happen and does happen, and speak for the victims. So I ask you all to do that. We can stop this violence. Please take part this year in the I Can, We Can campaign. We Can Stop the Violence is the theme of the campaign. You will see more about it on our Facebook page and hear more about it in the media. You will also hear about our Paint It Purple campaign. Please take part in that as well. We're trying to spread purple to kind of equal with a lot of the pink that we see in October. Pink is there for breast cancer awareness, which is another horrible disease that takes women every day from us. This one's preventable. They're making a lot of strides towards helping victims survive breast cancer. We can help victims survive domestic violence. We can stop this violence. So please wear purple to honor the victims. Come by when you see this tree. Think of the victims that have lost their lives. Think of those who are still living in silence every day because of fear. And do something to reach out to friends and neighbors to spread the word that we need to be the voice of victims. Most importantly, please help the Women's Center by attending our events. Our most important event every year is at the end of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. This year is the 29th of October. We meet here on the City Hall steps at 6 o'clock, and we make a march in silence to the Unitarian Society on Union Street to have a wonderful ecumenical vigil program to remember the victims that have died that year in Massachusetts as a result of domestic violence homicide. So it's a very important event. The March in Silence is a short walk, but it's a big step towards spreading the word about domestic violence and making sure that victims no longer have to be silent and that they know that there are people who will be their voices. So be their voices, paint it purple this month. Take part in the We Can, I Can bystander campaign to end domestic violence. And I want to thank all the city officials who came out, and of course Mayor Mitchell and Chief Provenza, very staunch supporters of ending domestic violence and supporters of the Women's Center and our work. And I want to make sure to acknowledge them tonight. As well, this is our 40th anniversary year. I always struggle for words to say we are we're not celebrating our 40th anniversary, but you know, we really can celebrate the fact that for 40 years we've been there for victims. It's hard to be celebratory about something that is taking women and men and children's lives, but we can celebrate that we are there, and we will be there for victims. We will continue to be there. But it is somehow appalling to me that we have been here for 40 years and that domestic violence is still very present in our society. We need to do much more to prevent it. We need to all be part of that work. And I thank you all for coming out tonight and acknowledging by your presence that you will be part of that work. Thank you all.
Thank you, Pam. Terrific speech. Before we light the tree, I neglected to acknowledge my friend and colleague on the school committee, John Fletcher, Dr. John Fletcher, who's here with us tonight. I believe we are ready to light the tree. Thank you for showing your support tonight, everybody.